Hello, this is Rad from RADACAD. In this video, I'm going to talk about Power BI REST API. What are they? How you can get some information and links about it, how to get started, some examples of what kind of output you can expect, and some sample scenarios. Let's go and check them out. To understand what is the Power BI REST API, let's talk about the REST API itself. REST or RESTful APIs are a set of web services that gives you ability to connect to some sorts of functions. You can pass some input parameters and get some outputs. And there are REST APIs for a lot of different things. Power BI has provided a set of APIs, REST APIs, that you can call from any application that has ability to call APIs or web services with some parameters, pass some information and get some outputs. These outputs are mainly from the Power BI service itself. For example, if you want to understand how many workspaces you have in your tenant, if you are a Power BI administrator, or how many workspaces you have in your own account, or what is your dataset refresh history, what was the latest dataset refresh status. Based on that, you want to kickstart the dataset refresh again. You want to do some automation, like after refreshing the dataset, after refreshing data flow successfully finished, you want to start the refresh of the dataset, or you want to create a deployment pipeline where you can publish the content of one workspace into another workspace, or many other things. These REST APIs are helpful for automating configuration of Power BI objects in the Power BI service, but accessing it from a programming language. So REST API is designed for programmers. There are different ways that you can run these REST API through applications. You can run it through C# VB.NET application, through any other application that has capabilities of running APIs or calling web services. These APIs can be also used for embedding Power BI content through Power BI Embedded, like embedding a report or dashboard, or many other approaches. To use this API, this link is the best link to start, which is the documentation link. All of these links that I'm showing to you, they are all available in my blog article down in the description, so check it out. You'll get all these links. And there are many categories of these APIs. For example, if you want to have an API that works with reports or with data flows or with data sets, there are different categories for each of these. The good thing about this this documentation website of Microsoft about APIs is that if you go to any of these, let's say, for example, I go to groups, and I see there are different operations, or you can call it functions. These functions that give you some information. For example, you can have a function that get list of workspaces. So I can click on it. It tells me how the function works, some information about the function, the API URL itself, some of the description about parameters. And then there is a very good option here called Try It, which you can actually use it. You need to have a Microsoft Learn account, but that account is something you can create for free. When you try it, you can log in using your account and then run it. If that function requires a parameter, you can pass it on as well. But in this case, this function can run even without a parameter. And when I run it, I get some results here that is list of my workspaces. So these are workspaces that I have in my environment. And when you look at my Power BI environment, you see that I have some of these workspaces already there. Right. These workspaces, some of them has some information about, like, are they part of a capacity or not. They all have this ID, which is a unique identifier as a object ID inside Power BI service. This ID is sometimes required to do some other actions. For example, then if you realize that this workspace is empty, you want to delete it, you can do that sort of action as well. So basically this area is quite a helpful area that you can write a simple program that get list of all workspaces, then use some other functions such as functions in data sets or functions in reports. For example, I can go and use some of these functions in reports that gives me list of all reports in a workspaces, get pages in group, or get reports in group, which gives me everything. Then if I find that there's a workspace without anything, then I can delete that workspace. So you can actually write a cleanup program or write a documentation program. If you look at Power BI Helper, Power BI Helper is actually created using this approach as well. I can use Power BI Helper to log in and get list of objects inside Power BI service. So as an example, just to show you how some of these functions with parameters works, I can go to one of these that use a data set. For example, one of these that gives me the refresh history of a data set. The function is called get refresh history. I can try it. This function requires a parameter which is a dataset ID. Let's say in my workspace, in this workspace, for example, I go to one of these datasets. This is the dataset. I can get the ID from here, or you can get the ID from the response of one of the other functions as well. So I'll get this and I'll pass it on here and run it, and it gives me the refresh history of that dataset. You see, for example, this has been started at this time, finished at this time, it's completed. If it was a failure, I can check it out. So it's quite helpful information. However, this is not the way that you really run this workspace or REST API. You usually run it through a application. Now, these applications can be C# or .NET application. If it is C# or .NET application, there is a Visual Studio NuGet for this, which you can actually download that NuGet, and that gives you all of these APIs. These NuGet can be accessed through this URL, which again you can find it in my blog article. The latest version of that at the time of creating this video is 4.11.0, or you can go to the Visual Studio itself under Tools, under NuGet Package Manager. You can go to the list of nuggets for Visual Studio. You can search for Power BI. I already have it installed, but if you don't have it installed, then you can select it and install it. The one that I have is already installed, so I don't really go and install it again. So here is the one that I have installed, 4.11.0, and this will give you access to a lot of functions, objects under the Microsoft Power BI API. Some of these works only with the admin account, some of these works with any types of accounts. And as I said, Power BI Helper itself, if you haven't worked with the service part of it, is actually using that bit. For example, if I go to Power BI Helper inside service, if I log in using my account, and if I use my account as a non-admin account, even an account which is not admin, and if I scan service object, it would give me a list of workspaces, how many reports, objects I have under workspaces. I can export this as a documentation, things like that. All of these behind the scene is using those REST API. There are other methods to call those REST APIs as well, and these methods include the usage of a PowerShell commandlet called Invoke-RestMethod. You can use that. It's one of the Windows PowerShell commands or functions that you can call a REST API using that. Not only Power BI REST API, any REST API. So it would be quite a bit of process to go and learn how to run it, but it's not as complicated as learning a programming language. That is your alternative method. If you go and want to use any of these methods, there are two steps that you have to do beforehand. You have to register your program that you are going to use for Power BI REST API. These programs can be registered through a step that I explained in a couple of articles separately. This is quite a big area itself. One step is to register an application, give all the access required so that your application can interact with Power BI service objects. This can be done through Azure portal or through dev.powerbi.com URL. After registering your application, you need to go through a process of authentication. So you need to create a user credential object, pass your credentials into that and get the response. And once you have done that, then your application can work with that. Also, in terms of the Power BI Embedded, if you want to work with Power BI Embedded, there's a separate documentation for Power BI Embedded, which includes everything, even the Developer in a Day course and some information about that, which you can use. And there is a Power BI Playground. The links to all of these are available inside the blog link that I mentioned to you. This is a place that it's like a sandbox. You can go and try some of these Power BI embedded features and embed a sample report, or even embed your own reports into this place and see how this works. For example, this is an example of a report embedded inside a custom application, how the code of that is, have a look at it and see different parts of these codes. So quite a good resource to learn all about working with this REST API. So in summary, Power BI REST API is a place, is a set of functions that everyone can use. You don't have to have a admin account to use it. Even a normal account can use it. It has different purposes, such as embedding Power BI object inside the custom application, or creating a custom application that interact with some of the Power BI applications. I have written 6 different articles talking about different things you can do using the REST API itself, but those are more developer oriented. You need to understand a little bit of C# to work with it. Mostly REST API is something that programmers are going to use. If you want to use these but you don't have programming knowledge, you can go and use PowerShell commandlets for Power BI. They are a little bit more limited than REST API, because REST API is quite a comprehensive list, but still they will give you some of the basic features that can be helpful for automating some of the parts of your Power BI solution. I hope this helped you in your Power BI solution. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me in the comments below. If you like this video, go ahead and subscribe into our YouTube channel. We have weekly videos on Power BI. Thank you.